The first of the next groups was human resources, obviously a critical piece, and I think those of you who've asked some questions about the cross-cutting issues in the county will really see them in this particular panel. Probably the most important thing to understand is that while there are about 8,000 county employees, as we discussed earlier, right now only a portion of them are under the control of the Board of County Commissioners. With the new charter, approximately 2,000 employees will move over to the executive side, and they'll now be the vast majority, about 2/3 of the employees, 5,200 employees under the current position levels, will be under the county executive. They fall really into three classifications, and this was something someone had asked earlier. Those who are in bargaining units and are classified employees, a little under 60%, another 40% who are not represented but are in classified positions, and then about 1%, a little less than 100 people in the current structure who are department directors and other senior heads. Like many of the other groups, human resources focused on transparency and accountability, how to create an ethical culture, how they could have consistent operations in the future and get the best possible candidates to come and work for the county. And their method for focusing on that really was to look at building a single human resources organization. Again, with a lot of offices being rolled into the executive, this is a good time to create a single organization, standardize classification and compensation plans, develop policies and procedures, and then implement them with performance measurement. I think you'll hear from Debbie and Tom that probably the most important thing really right out of the gate, though, is to get the structure of the Human Resources Department and the new Human Resources Commission that's outlined in the charter, to get that structure right. And they'll talk some more about their proposal, but essentially their model, which is one that's very common around the country and has been very successful, is to have a strong day-to-day operations in a Human Resources Department and have the Human Resources Commission focus on really being a commission, ethics enforcement, employee appeals of departmental decisions, and those metrics of how are we doing? Are we getting where we need to be? To go directly to their recommendations, as I mentioned, centralization, a specific oversight role for the commission, a more uniform set of procedures, and really a move to kind of standardize benefits and costs going forward. And of course, that will be a challenge for the new department with a lot of employees coming from separate agencies which formerly had their own policies and procedures and pay scales and other items. So there is probably a multi-year glide path to get there. The information technology group, another one that is really cross-cutting across multiplied areas. You heard earlier from some of the other groups that right now there's not a countywide IT strategy. Everything is very decentralized, and as a result, and part of that decentralization, a lot of the key risks to the county's IT structure are not addressed. At the same time, in spite of this, the IT department has put together very, very strong teams in a couple areas, particularly networking and web development, and they're already marketing some of those services elsewhere. So the question for them is, how do you drive efficiencies and deliver services in this new structure? Again, I think you'll find these themes very, very familiar. Their approach is to build a very strong governance model, standardizing IT practices across the county, rationalizing the services, and reducing both the hardware and unifying the software so that there are basic countywide systems. And John Hunter will talk, I'm sure, in some detail about the very large potential savings with relatively modest focused investment that can come from that. The key recommendations specifically replacing the current ADP board with a strong chief information officer who brings together countywide. Again, this gets to this issue several people have raised about strategic planning, having an IT strategic plan, understanding what the departments need, and then empowering the IT department to go out and deliver that. They've specifically asked in their particular case, which I think is an interesting theme that you'll perhaps see once you're in office, they've asked for external assistance in doing that, saying we know a lot, we have a pretty good idea how to do this, but there are people who do this professionally, do change management and strategic planning. We think we'll get farther faster with a modest investment in that. They're talking, as procurement did, as some of the HR folks will talk about having a single central organization. So not reducing services to departments, but unifying the current folks who are very distributed across departments and using bringing them together in a single organization to help drive these other issues of standardization. And then most important, probably in the very short term, improving disaster recovery for the county. The final group in this particular cluster is the Code of Ethics group, and of course, while their mandate cuts across all departments, you can see how in these particular areas, especially human resources, that their influence can be very strong. This group, which I believe is all volunteer, Linda will tell us, yes, worked really hard to put together a draft code of ethics for the county council to consider in January, and really match up the best practices from around the country. And Linda will tell you they did quite a bit of research and investigation of what others do to come up with really a state-of-the-art ethics policy. Their structure is outlined here, and I'll allow Linda to really go into a little bit more detail. Since we're running a little bit behind, I want to go right to the panelists and ask you to comment on your recommendations.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Southerington, and I'm with the Board of County Commissioners Office of Human Resources. And with me today is Tom Helfrich, who is the Chief Human Resources Officer for Key Corp. And we put our recommendations together. We had a nice group of about 13 to 15 people, along with volunteers. We're feeling pretty good about our recommendations. What I'd like to say is, really when we started thinking about our recommendations, we wanted to have some guiding principles that led us to some good solid recommendations. Some of our principles are transparency and accountability. We want the development of a highly ethical culture, efficiency and consistency in operations, valuing diversity and employment of the best qualified candidates based on merit and fitness. One thing that we thought was, well, everything was really important, but one thing we want to get across today to the candidates is we really want to ensure that the HR Commission is right from the get-go. So we've clearly delineated in our recommendations that the duties and functions of the HR Department versus the duties and functions of the HR Commission. We believe that the HR Department should report directly to the county executive and has the responsibility for the human resources, operations, policy, and strategy, where then the commission has the responsibility for ethics enforcement, as Dean said, employee appeals, and oversight of human resources performance metrics. So we had a lot of discussion around the HR Commission in our work groups. This is a body that we haven't had to deal with in Cuyahoga County government before, so we reached out to Allegheny County, as a lot of folks have done, and also Summit County here in Ohio, who also functions in our Human Resources Commission. In addition to the commission recommendations, we were also making a recommendation that we centralize all human resources functions of the charter impacted agencies into a single human resources department. We believe that makes sense, obviously, for efficiency and to eliminate redundancy of effort and work. Dean talked a little bit about, I'm not going to talk too long since we're running a little bit behind, but we want to, obviously, as we consolidate human resources function, we want to be under one classification and compensation plan, policies and procedures manual, and we really want to develop and execute a performance management system so we can develop a highly driven performance culture. Anything to add, Tom?
Just very quickly to what Debbie had to say, and going back to her earlier comments, we view these changes to be very substantive and very hard. And so we think the county executive is going to have to really focus on these kind of changes to drive significant change. I think it's important also to point out our strong view of the role of HR. While there is an execution role in this, we believe that the role of the human resource executive is really to be a senior part of the county exec's team, because you're talking about setting policy, setting HR strategy, and we believe that to to diminish that role is a big mistake. In addition, as Debbie said, clear separation between the role of the HR department and that of the commission. And we believe to get that right out at the beginning is absolutely critical. As we set up the commission, we also believe that it's really important that the county executive puts in place really good people who have leadership experience, HR experience, and really downplay the political side of the appointments for the commission.
Thanks. John, do you want to?
Sure, good morning. John Hunter with Cuyahoga County. My other co-chair, Bill Blvd, was unable to be here. He's the CIO of Eaton. We really consolidated our recommendations down into 3 recommendations. It's not rocket science. It's pretty simple. You've heard the theme. Consolidate, simplify, standardize, and proceduralize. So from a governance standpoint, strong CIO, kind of a buck stops here, no variance in going forward what's going to be determined to be. There will be a central strategic plan, 3 to 5 years, that will be followed under our recommendations. Standardizing purchasing, standardizing software. I know there's been a lot of questions on the ERP systems. We look at that as a day 0 initiative. We could not get a very good, clear answer of what the IT spend was in the county because of the disparate systems. If you put all that information in one place, you can report it, you can measure it, you can then determine if your strategies, if your process, if your procedures are working. So from an IT standpoint, it's really that simple. And then, in the interest of time, the third kind of recommendation is really to regionalize what we're doing. We do 2 things very well. We do web and application development well, and our network infrastructure and communications as well. We look to be able to save the region probably with cooperation from the other local government agencies 20 to 40%. Fairly short term with some strategic partnerships that we have in place with standardizing the purchases so we can purchase off one contract, working with the state to do that, bulk buying, and moving forward, that really is where we see the biggest savings. What kind of savings you probably want to know do we project? So from a governance consolidation standpoint of staff, we look at probably a $750K expenditure, some of that on talent, some of that on some metrics and performance software. We look at probably a $10 to $15 million capital outlay for an ERP system. That's the hard fact of the matter. What do we project? We project by consolidating governance and consolidating methods, probably an annual savings of $5.6 million a year. We look to save, by implementing an ERP system, probably $2.5 million a year. So if you look at it that way, there's probably a 4-year payback. Though I think there will be other savings that aren't reflective in the increase in efficiency and the ability to go forward reporting wise. That's what, and to do that, we would look to freeze what we're spending except for actual necessities until an ERP system was developed. So the bare minimum expenditure going
Thanks.
forward.
That's great. Thanks. We have a little bit of extra time for reasons we'll explain in a moment, so Linda, feel free to jump in and tell us a little bit more about your work.
Greetings from the Code of Ethics Work Group. Barbara Barlow and I were speaking for the 15 members and friends of the League of Women Voters. We were invited by the new Cuyahoga Now group to study county ethics law around the country and to craft best practices into a code for Cuyahoga County. Now, this then is a recommended or suggested ordinance, which makes it different from the other proposals that you've heard here today. So it would require, it's also mandated by the charter. It's now available on the TAG website. However, some final revisions may yet be made on September 29th. We have one more meeting. So here briefly are its major attributes. First of all, number one, culture. The code is a blueprint for establishing new routines and developing new habits. Nothing short of that will change the ethical climate in our county. That new culture has to start at the top, and that is you all, those whom we elect and those then whom you appoint to run the new county system. Number two is training. The code sets up and mandates procedures to educate and train all offices, departments, and agencies, executive and legislative agencies as well. It also requires a signed commitment of all covered persons to know, to understand, and to follow the rules. Number three, transparency. The code mandates registries for all contractors and lobbyists who must also disclose their identities and activities to secure business with the county or to influence its decisions, along with records of permissible gifts and campaign contributions. All these data will be posted online. Here is the IT component. Needs to be posted online for a system of one-stop transparency. That would be very good for a concerned public, which could then conveniently search and cross-reference these several registries. Number four, watchdogs. The code spells out enhanced whistleblower rights, obligations, and protections adapted from Washington, D.C.'s strongest ordinance in the country. It even covers employees of contractors while they are at work on county business. Whistleblowers must be encouraged and emboldened to safeguard the public interest. Number five, teeth. We heard a bit about teeth when we listened to the Judicial Services presentation. With no teeth, all the new rules in the world can't change a whole ethical culture. That is why our code establishes an uncompensated ethics board to reinforce locally the efforts of the Ohio Ethics Commission to educate and enforce ethics compliance statewide. This board, this county board, would consist of 5 respected, independent, civic-minded residents appointed and confirmed by the county executive and the council from a list of nominees. This list of nominees would be submitted by some designated nonpartisan, and the council would designate, submitted by nonpartisan, nonprofit, countywide organizations which have demonstrated over a long period of time interest in good government and institutional integrity. That is an idea we got from Milwaukee County. We think someone must be minding the ethical store, right here, not just in Columbus. And finally, the issue of cost, which we all have to address. The code also requires 1 full-time qualified county ethics officer appointed by and answerable to the ethics board alone. Now, that is very much different from, and it needs to be reconciled with, the call we heard earlier for an inspector general. That position would be within the executive department as we understand it, and we think ethics enforcement needs to go beyond that, beyond the executive branch. And we're not sure if the executive branch can in all cases, investigate itself. We believe an ordinance-created independent ethics officer is much the preferable way to go. Now, the code further mandates, the code we have devised further mandates several important functions that need to be performed by this ethics board. A big education program covering all employees and all covered persons, a big transparency mechanism, and a credible due process system of enforcement with subpoena power and consequences, real ones. The ethics board would have some latitude to determine how to staff this. They could hire employees, they could contract with specialists, or they could share with departments, employees, half employees. I'm not quite sure how to do that. That would be an option of the council. Okay, we believe that the cost of prevention is far less than the cost of corruption. We ask whether the county can afford not to do this. So we thank the executive committee for the chance to share this information with you. The winners among you can set the climate and make good government start to happen. We wish you good luck in the ongoing campaign, and we hope you will give ethics issues top priority in all your discussions with your future constituents. I think Barbara might want to add one or two things.
We could make that very brief. We really want to leave some time for questions. Thanks.
I just want to emphasize two things here. We're talking about covered persons as including elected officials, appointed officials, various classifications of employees for across the county, as well as, obviously, as Linda indicated, the contractors. Because of that reason, we feel that the ethics work of the county must be organized and motivated from one independent office that would work, for example, potentially with the Human Resources, the Human Resources Commission in their ethics activities. We need a consistent effort in the ethics realm, and we need everybody to be on the same page across the county. So whether they are classified employees or elected officials, everybody must be operating under the same requirements.
Thank you. If we could,
It sounds as if some good ideas are coming from Human Resources, Procurement, and Justice Services. We would like to suggest that they could somehow be folded into a code of ethics and into the work, the job description for an ethics board and an ethics officer. Thanks.
great, thank you. We'll ask for questions again and again. If we can really focus on questions rather than any statements, that would be very helpful. Thanks.
Well, it's a semi-statement. I mean, someone talked about it's not rocket science, and I agree that to save $5 million in this catastrophe of IT that we've got in the county is not rocket scientist. But if we implemented all of the things we've talked about this morning, my number is $200 million we can be saving each and every year in 4 years, and that does take rocket science.
Hi, I'm Laverne Jones-Gore, District 9, and I am extremely excited about hearing that we have some issues here with human resources. Are we going to provide our county voters with policies and procedures and job descriptions in light of what's happened within that realm of human resources?
Yes, we are going to be doing that. That's part of our efforts over the next probably 3 to 6 months.
Okay. Second question, I've tried to navigate the county IT system, and it's impossible. Is that going to be changed? Is that challenge something you've been looking at, working on?
Yeah, that really goes to to the point of simplifying, standardizing, and
Modernizing.
making IT a utility, just like water or electricity, something to function, to do your job or to do the tasks that are needed. So yes.
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly that we need to have an ethics department, but you are right. It would be hard for the county executive to critique himself or critique his office. I think you're absolutely right that that's something that we need to at least look at when we're developing a policy for ethics within Cuyahoga. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make one more comment. We do have about 3,800 of our employees who currently operate under one policy manual that can be found out on the website, and classifications and salary schedules are out there as well, and job description, yes. So there are some out there that for a lot of our employees already, 3,000. Thank you.
Dave Greenspan, Council, District 1. Linda, I appreciate the work your group did on the ethics ordinance. A recommendation, I am in favor of an inspector general. However, I am in favor of the inspector general being independent and outside of county government, which very well may be the appropriate officer you're speaking of in the ethics ordinance to report to or to be part of that department. And as you go through your revisions for September 29th, I know this is, the independent inspector general is not a concept that's currently being discussed, although the inspector general is. You would possibly consider the inclusion of that ethics officer that you're referring to as folding under the independent inspector general concept. And that concept very simply is that independent inspector general will not report to the county executive or the council, because you are correct. You cannot have somebody administer an ethics ordinance who reports to the person who very well, and not indicting anyone here, but we see what happens within the county. If someone is reporting to an individual who possibly could be in violation of the county ordinance, we have to be careful that they don't apply input influence in the ultimate decision-making of the independent inspector general or this ethics officer. So my recommendation would be to look and see if the person or the office you're speaking of could fold under the provision of an independent inspector general, and the other groups that are presented today as well, to see if they'd be amenable to shifting I would say the internal inspector general, which is a complete contradiction of terms, to be an independent inspector general. Thank you.
Thank you. It really doesn't matter what the ethics officer is called, and there's much similarity in the job descriptions that we hear proposed.
John, you indicated that the IT is day one, so I assume that means that it's probably a pretty critical component of where we're going. Has there been identification of best practices within governmental entities to identify what an IT system would be for our county as a best practice across the country? And if so, is there an RFQ that's already being planned or thought about, and how long is that process going to take? And then the launch date ultimately. As you can tell, business says, let's keep, this is the number one thing that's going to cross over every one of our disciplines. And it's going to cross over ethics, it's going to cross over procurement, it's going to cross over everything. So to me, it's one of our critical business functions we need to get right here.
Well, to answer your question, there has been some research done. And as far as an RFP being put out yet, no, there has not. It's been actually proposed to bring the companies in and set up almost a bidding situation and let them bid against themselves. That right now would not be permissible, but that is something, we had put our recommendations past the CIO of KeyBank, Sherwin-Williams, Parker Hannafin, the president and founder of C-Track and Fit Technology. So we had an outside board look at our IT recommendations, and coming back, that's what they thought. We did, however, and are in the process of doing an RFP for print and fax consolidation, and we look for that to save probably $1.3 million, and hopefully we'll have a pilot up by January on that, and then be able to implement that.
So that a decision as far as a system for an ERP would be, I would assume, 6 to 12 months at least. I mean, realistically.
It really depends on if the governance structure, if the county executive goes along with the governance structure and you have a strong CIO form of IT leadership, I think you could probably make a selection in 3 months.
Wow.
And go go forward from there and probably implement within a year to 18 months after that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next panel. Thank you for your comments. So our last panel will be boards and commissions, county council, and government collaboration. I don't believe they are all represented here today, so the county administrator, Jim McCaffrey, is going to cover some of them, as well as the work group heads who are here. The last three groups start off with boards and commissions. The boards and commissions group did a really nice catalog of all the various boards and commissions, to the sublime to something else. And of course, these are the sorts of organizations that get built over time in any government, and need a periodic review. So I think they did a nice job of that. Most of the boards, obviously, under the new structure, will be appointed by the county executive with council confirmation, but the current boards will continue until the new structures are established. Their budgets are set, and that's probably a key way to address them. But really sort of a process for the council and the executive to work on in the first year is to decide which of those need to continue. The commission's recommendations focus very much on how future board and commission selections should be made. A lot of focus on notifying, having a public notification and a web announcement and other ways to get the word out about vacancies, a uniform application for membership, some county staff within the executive's office that would manage that, probably not as a full-time job, but have someone who's really focused on them, knows the rules, make sure that the transparency issues occur. And then once people are appointed, to make sure that they're, in the appointment process, to make sure that they're balanced, they're diverse in any number of ways, including gender and age and other factors. And then finally, providing some sort of strong orientation for them. They also recommended revisiting, ultimately, of the fact that under the current charter, while the council and executive appoint board and commission members, the executive can dismiss. They also noted that there have been several new boards suggested. So at the same time, we're looking at trimming down the current list of over 100 boards, that there may be a couple different ones that we want as well. They did identify specific recommendations for consolidation and elimination of boards, and those will be in their recommendations. And although there are only 5 boards, as I mentioned, that have compensated members, there's a substantial amount of staff time within the departments used to support them. So there are savings from reducing the numbers, even though they're not directly seen in the agency budgets. And second area, which Joan and Jeannie will talk about, county council planning. Their focus was really on how the new council will operate, trying to give some guidance to those of you who are council candidates on meshing what the charter has and best practice from around the country on county councils. The strong executive council model is not unique. Obviously, there are 10 or 20 larger counties around the country that use it. There are a lot of variation in each of those, and they did a lot of research that they'll talk about in that area. But they put together really a suggestion for all of you, an organizing outline for the council, a draft set of rules to operate under, a staffing structure, and an outline of a contract approval process to give you a starting place for your discussions after the November election. They specifically mentioned, looked at a way of what council staffing might look like, and that gets at some of the issue about additional numbers of people, what your meeting schedule might be like, and the idea of transparency and ability for the public to interact with you. And then specifically on the contracting process, which they'll describe, there's been quite a lot of discussion, but they suggested an authority a structure where the executive would have a certain authority, then a board of control would be established for larger contracts, and the very largest contracts would get council approval. and they'll talk some more about that. Finally, the County Government Collaboration Group, which was led by Mayor Bruce Akers, and included some state legislators as well in its leadership, and a lot of public officials from around the county. They wanted to, I think, as much as anything else, make sure that those issues of collaboration were not lost in sort of the functional areas of government. So while procurement and public works talked about ways they could collaborate across the county, John Hunter from IT just talked about possibly providing certain services, in fact is already providing certain services to local governments. They thought a more formal structure would be helpful, and that particularly one of the county executive's senior staff should be appointed as a formal liaison. So as someone else earlier talked about, having a point of contact, whether that's a new position or somebody who has multiple hats, the idea would be that there would be somebody for mayors and legislators to work with on critical issues, whether they're just constituent casework or large economic development issues. They also suggested that the council might consider having a subcommittee or some sort of structure to deal with regional and cooperative efforts, so that the council is engaged as well. And then they had several very creative ideas about setting up brownfields redevelopment funding and other revenue sharing opportunities for municipalities. So with that, I'm going to ask the work group chairs and the county administrator to jump in and give us a little more context to that.
Again, I apologize. Adrian Maldonado was supposed to be here this morning from boards and commissions, but he hasn't made it. You know, as this committee worked, I think the real focus became the fact that the sitting board of commissioners either sits on or appoints to over 100 different boards in this community. And while we're talking about paring them down, I can tell you in the last month and a half, I've had requests for probably 15 additional board appointments to occur. Everybody's trying to get in before you guys get there, by the way, just so you know. And for the most part, we're not allowing that to happen. We're really not doing appointments. But there's a yin and a yang with these board appointments, if you will. There's really two yings and a yang, if you will. The first is, for many boards, there really aren't any criteria for who you appoint or what you need to sit on a board. Use Metro Health Medical Center, for example. The sole criteria for Metro board appointment is that no more than 5 men or women of one party can sit on the board at any time. It means the other 5 have to be the other party or independent and a mix. But other than that, it doesn't call that you know anything about hospital administration, you know anything about finance, you know anything about health care. Basically, that's the criteria. Board of Revision. Let's talk about that because everybody in the community is. Sole criteria for Board of Revision is a 3-member board, 1 from the Board of Commissioners, 1 from the Treasurer, and 1 from the Auditor. Nobody ever said, geez, maybe they ought to understand the appraisal process and know about real estate. Duh. But, I mean, the truth is, for years, that's how we operated. So I think the thrust of this was to review these boards, figure out what they're really supposed to be doing, put down some criteria standardization for appointment and selection, and then have rules for dismissal. If somebody's not doing their job on a board, they shouldn't be allowed to continue to sit on the board. And I can tell you the Adams Board, I see Catherine Gambatista was the chair. The Adams Board has very specific statutory regulations. You miss 3 meetings and you're off the Adams Board, period. But that's a requirement, but most boards don't have that. It's a little bit more nebulous. So I think part of the thrust of this committee was to really sit down and standardize the process to talk about it. I know of 5 different boards in the area of aging. I'm not sure why in Cuyahoga County we need 5 separate boards in the area of aging. Maybe it's one overarching board to look at the needs of our senior citizens and what we do there, and then everything comes off of it. But I think it's something we should sit down and discuss, and I think that was the real crux of this. The other thing I believe was a recommendation from boards and commissions is there are a number of boards that have appointments from the county, the city of Cleveland, but very few actually incorporate the suburban communities into that appointment process. And it may be high time that we begin in this county to think about the role of the outer county regions as well, that there should be a mix of Cuyahoga County, City of Cleveland, and possibly suburban mayors and managers in appointments to some of these sitting boards as well. When you look at the Port Authority, you look at RTA, things like that. While there are some suburban mayors, it's probably not as well thought out as it could be in that process. So I think that would be another recommendation that comes off of this. A lot of the boards that we have are set up by statute. If the federal government gives you money in an area, they require you to have an independent board to oversee how that money's spent. So their boards are actually attached to county agencies as kind of an overseeing role. Again, it may be time from a statutory perspective to review that with the council coming in. I'm not sure why the county council in many respects couldn't function as the board for some of this, because they'll be doing decision-making with those agencies as well. So that'd be maybe another way to kind of bring this under control and begin to review it. And again, I think anytime a new board comes, the idea of the group that reviewed this was some simple questions about why this board, what will its real role be, how is it going to function, who's going to be on it, and what is our decision-making to put somebody on it. So I think it's a standardization of this entire process. I know Sister Joanne was a little involved. I don't know if you have anything to add
No, I think
to
you
boards and
covered it.
commissions.
Thank you.
I think that's the crux of it.
I just wanted to emphasize that in the council planning work group, we recognize that there's an entire section, chapter of the charter that talks about the role and the responsibilities of the council. We focused on 4 areas that we felt you needed to have something to work with on day one. And those had to do with the rules. You need some operating rules. So we're offering a draft set of rules. We fully expect people to argue about those, edit, amend, whatever, but at least you have something to start with. You're not working with a blank page. Secondly, we established or recommended an organizing meeting outline that says, here are the things we think you need to do in your first meeting. We expect the people who are elected to take that outline and fill in the blanks, add in things that we may have forgotten or that you want in there. As far as the staffing structure, we recommended a relatively small staff for the council to begin with. We believe that the council needs, as you can tell, there have been questions about the number of people who work for the county and the recommendations that are coming from more people. We think that the council ought to set an example by trying to operate with a lean staff. So our recommendation is a lean staff. And then the last area is an area that we focused on with respect to what is the council's role in the contracting process. And our recommendation is sort of a middle-of-the-road recommendation that gives the exec some authority, this Board of Control some authority, and the full council authority on bigger purchase items. And we're hoping that that is fully discussed and vetted in the interim, the November-December timeframe. So.
And then I'm Bruce Akers as well. The government collaboration was an interesting group. We actually had many, many mayors that sat on that committee as a working group. And their first recommendation, as a lot of them, seems to be a new person, a staff person. And I heard Mr. Lancey speak about, he thinks it's the executive role to do some of this. And while I would agree with it, I also think the executive will have 29 hours of work to do in a 24-hour day every day. So I think what the mayor's managers really thought about was that there would be a go-to person for them to bring issues to, that we begin to think a process that the county government relates differently to municipal government, that municipal governments relate differently to each other, and that we all begin to relate differently to the state government and the federal government. And it works out in a couple ways. One is certainly cost savings. I'll give you 3 examples. This year, we are actually opening the county's benefit package up to municipal governments if they're interested in joining in. We have 8,000 employees in our benefit package, and we get a very good price on health care, if there is such a thing as a very good price. But we have a large volume discount, and we get a very good price on our health care, and we have a very good health care package. A small city with 10 to 50 employees can't get the same bang for its buck that the county gets with 8,000 employees. So our intent is to open up our benefit package to smaller municipalities to come into it either save them money by entering our package or being able to use us as a negotiation tool with their own healthcare vendor. That's a threat of coming into the county, but it's a way to help municipalities save dollars. Another area is 5 or 6 years ago, if you remember, there was a company called Adelphia Cable. Adelphia folded. We bought their lines. The county bought all Adelphia's lines. We own those. And they go out from Central City, Cleveland, all the way out through the suburbs. So another idea was, could the county let municipalities piggyback on our email system and some of our IT structure that will save municipalities a lot of money just in putting their email out and doing other things. Third is, in fact, this afternoon I'm going to Washington, D.C. Once a quarter, I go to D.C. and meet with the entire congressional delegation. 2 times a year, I take commissioners. 4 times I go myself. When I take a commissioner, I get to see them. When I don't, I get to see their staff. But the point is that a city like Rocky River could never afford to have a Washington lobbyist on its own. I mean, it's expensive. It's an expensive proposition. We spend a lot of money for our lobbyists because they're very good to get things done. County should open up our lobbyists to municipalities as well. The whole idea is if we raise the region, everybody in the region raises together. So ideas like that, how do you cooperate? How do we go to Columbus and get legislative change that benefits this region? I'll give you an example. We're the only county in the state of Ohio that still pays for the appellate court in its county. 87 other counties, it's completely paid for by the state of Ohio. We spend $1 million a year on staff for the appellate court. Because way back, a long time ago, everybody paid their share of the appellate court. And over the years, the state has transitioned all 87 other counties to be completely state paid for, but somehow they forgot about Cahuga. And now they don't have enough money to do it. So I've been warned not to piss off the Supreme Court, so I'm going to tell you that. But and I was actually told that by a state legislator, by the way, that I shouldn't piss off the Supreme Court. But the truth is, where's the fairness in one county paying $1 million for a system that everybody else gets at state cost? I think there's things like that we can do together, we can move forward on. We've identified in this a number of purchasing and other things that could be changed. It could certainly be beneficial to taxpayers. If you go into the procurement process, the way we're building the medical mart is something called design build. And I'm not going to bore you, it's a long presentation, but that's illegal for government to do today. However, it makes the process go quicker and it's cheaper and you save money and you get as good a building. Maybe it's time that we revisited our laws and began to look at different things. And that was really the crux of what the government collaboration thought about, is how do we work together in a better, different way? How do municipalities work together? 59 municipalities in the county. Do we need 59 dispatches? Do we need 59 police departments, fire departments, schools? I mean, you get it. Anybody, start talking that is a dangerous thing, I suppose. But I do think ultimately, if you think of this government transformation, the next step is to begin to think in those terms as well. Even the state of Ohio. There's 88 counties, because when they created counties, you had to be able to ride in a buggy from the county seat to the edge of the county, north, east, south, and west, and back in one day. Well, I have some friends that are Amish, but I haven't ridden in a buggy in my entire life. I'm in a car. I don't know that you really can argue that you need 88 counties in the state of Ohio anymore, to be honest with you, if you really think about it. Think about cost savings and streamlining some of those governmental structures. And I think that really was the conversation that the mayors that were on this group began to have was, maybe take little steps first, small bite of the apple, but how do you begin to move that forward? So you set up the table, you tee the ball up to have those bigger conversations in a couple of years about how you really do government transformation and restructuring.
Great, thank you. We have some time for questions before the break.
Regarding the boards,
Yes.
is there any reason that the new government can't have all of the board members reapply?
Ken, first I'll tell you I'm not an attorney. I didn't sleep at Holiday Inn Express last night. I don't think there is, but I will tell you, each of these work groups had an attorney associated with them to answer those kind of legal questions. I don't think there is, but I can't say that, to be honest with you. What I can say to you is we can get you the answer by the end of the day.
Okay.
But I don't think there's any reason why we could not begin to reappoint the boards.
This way you get to see qualifications for each
I
of
do
them.
believe there's actually at least 11, maybe 13 board appointments up in January anyways already. that are to be reappointed, new appointments in January.
Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to know exactly who the lobbyist is for the county.
Lou Stokes.
And he
Congressman
brings
Louis
back.
Stokes.
Okay. Thank you.
And we work with, he's a group called Normandy that works with him, Stan Skokie, who's a Capitol Hill veteran, been there like 15, 20 years, chief of staff for a number of congressmen and senators. But it's Congressman Stokes in unison with Mr. Skokie and a woman named Peggy Mathna that are lobbyists.
Thank you.
And Congressman Stokes is a rock star in Washington, by the way. Not just with members of the House and Senate, but if you go there with them, the maintenance men and the security officers know him on a first-name basis, which is pretty, speaks very highly of Lou Stokes, I believe.
I would just like to offer some information having to do with your considerations for this notion of a board of control. As you know, the elected officials from the auditor, treasurer, recorder, all those offices will be falling under the executive. So we fully anticipate that the number of contracts that will have to come before whatever body will be increased substantially from what it is now. And so as you're thinking of these things, that each of these areas, the executive authority, the board of control, or council approval, will all have processes involved. It wouldn't be just that, a department would bring to the county executive a contract. It would have to follow the normal legal processes for procurement for whatever service or goods that we are trying to contract for. When you have executive authority and board of control, well, the executive authority wouldn't even have a reading, but for the board of control, it would come before the board of control once, and unless there's some issues or problems associated with that. But when you're thinking about going to full council approval, and if we did that for every single contract, it would be 3 readings that would be required, possibly referral to a committee, and so the process is quite lengthy in that regard. So as we were discussing this board of control, we felt that if a majority of the contracts went that route, that the departments would be able to more efficiently and effectively conduct their business and get the citizens taken care of for whatever services.
To give you a sense of the volume, there were 939 contracts or agreements brought before the Board of County Commissioners in 2009. Some of those had to come multiple times. They come before the board to request the authority to prepare. They come, and what we'd like to provide is a process that doesn't require people coming multiple times before multiple bodies, and yet is still an open, transparent, accountable process.
The board of control would have an official agenda. It would be
It would be a public
meeting, and the contracts would be processed in an appropriate manner. So,
Have you an idea of what the relative number of contracts are in those 3 brackets, under 50, 50 to 250 and over?
They do have that down.
yes, we have 50% of 52% of contracts were 50,000 or below, which was about 490. Between 50 and 250,000 was 27%, or about 253, and above 250,000 was 196, or 21%. And so that obviously changes from year to year depending on what's going on, and that is not the full extent of what would come before, currently comes before the Board of County Commissioners. We ultimately end up with around 3,000 to 3,500 resolutions that result from official actions from the board. So the contracting piece is just a portion of that overall process.
2 things I'd point out before Dale asked this question about board of control that I pointed out. First is we have to figure out how to handle amendments. Your contract may start out within one of those figures, those allotted amounts. The first amendment pushes it into the next category, so how is that handled? Also, there's a difference between a contract that we go out on an RFP, and it's a 3-year contract, but we only encumber 1 year's money in a budget, because then if you encumber all 3 years, it's a false sense of spending. It doesn't give you a true expenditure pattern for the county. So what you do is you encumber one year's dollars in the first year of the contract, then you go back and amend it the second year to add the second year's dollars, so on. So that's a little bit different process than the contract, and this is an IT thing that happens all the time. The company comes in, does a little consulting contract for you on your IT need. They're really good guys. They get to know your agency really well and your needs. So then when you want to build that software system, you turn to them to do it because, you know, they got their foot in the door, they're good guys, and then once they've built it, it's proprietary, so of course they're gonna have the maintenance contract. So that little $22,000 consulting contract turns into a $3.5 million ongoing building the system, maintaining the system, contract over 10 or 15 years because you just keep them around. And we either gotta figure out a different way to do that from the beginning and really bifurcate it out, or if that's the way the game's played, then you build all that into the first process, and I think you get a much better deal by doing it all at the beginning than if you do it out over the years. Don't know till you guys, I'll tell you that I have exactly the answer, but those are things to be thinking about in this contracting process as we move forward.
Bruce's comment somewhat relates to my question, which is whether you gave consideration to any factors other than dollar amount. For example, I could conceive of a new contract in a controversial area that might be for $15,000 or $25,000, where the council would want to have hearings on it because it's precedent setting. And then I might conceive of another contract that's $500,000, but it's very routine and where maybe a council process wouldn't be required.
We did take that into consideration and felt that the council and executive then would have to make exceptions and define what those are.
I think one of the things we see around the country is that the state of the art right now is to really provide executive governments in the move for efficiency and effectiveness increasingly broad authority to negotiate and conclude contracts, and that the role of the legislature is to oversee those in at some point. So obviously you'll have this discussion, but the current practice would be if there's a very controversial contract coming up, presumably the executive would be smart enough to talk to you about it beforehand. But there's nothing in any of this that would preclude you at the back end from spending your time reviewing that, doing oversight, and fulfilling kind of the traditional role of the legislature. I think what you'll find, as was hinted at here, is that you have a very large volume of even some of the large contracts that come up every year. For example, in human services, where there are very few providers, you have very strict deadlines in terms of when you have to do it. And in any given year, you probably will have very little time as a part-time counsel to get in front of that contract and approve it. And you're really going to need your internal human services committee to be thinking out a year or two or three. How do we want the system to look? How does this work with the strategic plan? And in a lot of places, the other thing I found, for example, where I was in Philadelphia County, council only approved multi-year contracts. Everything else, once the budget was approved, the budget was the vehicle for council to get its word in and decide what the priorities were. And then council had spent its time, again, being a part-time body with thousands of contracts that could focus on picking out the ones that really wanted to work on and being very effective on those.
One of the things that we wanted to be clear about is that there were two different work groups that were talking about this issue of contract approval. And neither Procurement and Public Works nor Council Planning believes that the council ought to be passing on every single contract that comes before the county. We think that would be paralyzing to the government. It would be not a good use of the county council's time. So.
And it is about getting the services out there to the citizens. And so, we wanted to come up with some sort of suggestion, an effective way in order to do that. We do have currently an automated agenda system, so however it is chosen to be done, everything is automated and done through the departments, and the county executive would have ultimate authority for the contracts coming forward anyway. And so we also have automated signatory authority for the different parties as well. And then the newest part is a document management system, so that at this point, when it's finalized, all the contracts and documents can go on the county's intranet, and then if the council and executive decide otherwise, it could also be put onto the internet, so that the citizens can look at those particular items as well. So
I'd also point out, we're actually more stringent in this county than state law requires. By state law, as the administrator, I could independently sign any contract up to $50,000 without any Board of Commissioners oversight. Commissioners don't allow that. I have signatory authority on an item on the agenda where there's usually anywhere from 25 to 60 contracts that the commissioners vote and approve. I then have signatory authority after that to sign it. But actually, by state law, I could independently sign in many counties contracts up to $50,000 without BOCC vote or oversight. I would not by any stretch recommend that you go that way. I understand that some of this was done because state legislators were concerned about volume of contracts and waiting periods and all those kind of things. So there are some tools at your disposal to think about on how to move contracts forward.
Quick question. The size of this group that's going to review these is expected to be what?
I think there were 7 people on it, and it was primarily executive branch people with the president of the council and the chair of the council finance committee.
On that, that was my question, as to having them. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, and our draft recommendations are up on the website. The rules, the recommended staffing structure, the organizing outline, and this whole process are available in draft form on the website if you want to look at them in detail.
one other, we had a couple extraneous items that we also discussed and came up with recommendations for, had to do with the public meetings of the council. And so we originally thought about having it like, or recommending to you the first and or second and fourth Thursday of the month, you know, at a particular time. But in recognizing that either you want to have more meetings or, but maybe just recommend a number of meetings per year, like currently the Board of County Commissioners has to meet by law 50 times per calendar year. So if you recommend a number or want to have a number of meetings versus we're going to meet every other Thursday, maybe a little more flexible to your schedule and to your needs. Also in regards to meetings, we are recommending maybe quarterly public forums so that it's a little sometimes overwhelming, I guess is a word you could use, to bring the council or the meetings on the road, if you will. Organizing a place, have recordings. Currently, we digitally record everything, staff attending, documents, and all of that. So where we thought in order to get out to the public, instead of moving the meetings elsewhere, have these public forums quarterly where you could actually entertain comments and suggestions and hopes and whatever that the citizens have to say to you. And so those were basically the two other recommendations that this group had.
Great, thank you. I think Joe's going to have a couple of comments before we go to our break.
You have one more question, Dean?
One more. John Zapala, running in District 2. In light of the fact that these very contracts are probably at the core of why we can end up in such places, do you feel as you reviewed all that the processes that you are recommending and that the council can adopt will be sufficient enough to communicate to the people and the residents in this county that won't happen again? Or you know, because when you know, I understand if you need big pens, we don't, you know, the council doesn't need to sign off on that. But up to $50,000 to the residents is a lot of money. Thank you.
I don't mean to be, this isn't going to be flippant, but I am absolutely convinced that no process in the world, no matter how many rules, how many dotting i's and crossing t's we require people to do could have prevented the kind of stuff that went on here. So I think we need to be realistic about that. The criteria, the way in which these processes and contracts and the residents of this county are going to be regain the trust is going to start with you and the people who are elected.
However, keep in mind that at present day, you have a board of 3 county commissioners that has authority over certain contracts, certain expenditures. County auditor has authority over different expenditures. In fact, there's a huge fund called the appraisal fund that is solely under the discretion of the county administrator. The county engineer has discretion on spending. A lot of the county engineer's contracts ultimately come to the board of commissioners, but way down the road. The new form of government will vest all of that authority under one county executive with council oversight. So I agree with Sister that no, if there's deceit in the heart of a man or woman, deceit's going to happen. However, the structure that has been created is going to shine more light and more eyes and give more people the authority to intervene than has been before. So I think it's a mixed answer. I do think some of what we're about to enter into is certainly going to help make sure that something like that never happens again, at least not to the massive amount or the extent that it did. But are people going to nickel and dime here and there if they got deceit in their heart, John? I'm afraid they're going to. But I don't think you'll see these massive problems again.
And additionally, even for contracts of that amount, there still will be a process, so they still will have to follow whatever procurement process it will be required at that time. Say, right now, if it's under so much, they have to have 3 informal quotes or what have you. And then the contract goes through various processes where it goes, we make sure the money is available. We make sure it goes to the prosecutor's office for legal form and correctness. It has to be, the monies have to be encumbered. And so, there is literally, it goes through procurement to make sure all of that was followed. So there is a process. It's not just, a department bringing the contract to the executive and say, here, sign this.
Right. Keep in mind, appraisal contracts never came through that process.
Correct.
They did not legally have to.
And we were focused in our work group on the back end. There's a whole procurement function that comes on the front end, and those processes, as Jean said, all of those things will have to be followed. So in answer to your question, I think we're confident that our recommendation will work.
Joe, real quick, and we don't have time, Dale, your question earlier about justice reform, saving money, there's actually a justice reform initiative going on in the county. Common Police Court, county prosecutor, sheriff, public defender, private defense bar are all involved. It's around the early disposition of cases, the idea that men and women who are violent, a danger, stay in jail. Men and women who are on a drug charge that get out as soon as they're arraigned, you move that up so that within 24 hours, 48 hours, they can get out, so you're not paying for them. We don't have time. Commissioner Jones is here. He's my boss. I can't keep him waiting to speak. But there's a lot of information. It's on the Justice Reform website. I'll be glad to provide any of you privately with it. Those of you that win and we begin an educational process in services, we'll put a lot of that information in for you. But there is a process right now in place to save money. We spent 2 years ago over $10 million for prisoner board and care for the sheriff. We were able to get it down to a couple million last year. It's inching up, but there is an initiative in place that's looking at how we control some of those things and still get good justice, better justice for men and women, but control our costs. But I'll talk to you privately if you're interested.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to stress and thank all of the work groups. It was just a huge community and volunteer effort that went into all the work. And again, you really got a really high level view of the work that they did. I highly recommend. Some of their product is already up on the website as the final presentations go in front of the executive committee Saturday. All of those work groups will have information up on the website. It's very detailed information that'll provide a lot of help to you as you move on through your campaign. So I really want to say thank you to all the folks that presented and all the work that went into that. And as I indicated earlier, I'm going to try to do whatever possible to keep this on schedule. So what I'd like to do is skip the break and go right into the next presentation. I'd like to introduce Commissioner Peter Lawson-Jones to discuss the community benefits aspects of the Medical Mart project. This is a critical project that we have to ensure that all facets of the community benefit from. So I'll introduce Peter. Thank you, Peter.
I'll just sit here. Jonathan's here too.
That's fine. Joe, thank you very much, not just for the nice introduction, but more importantly for the great work you've done as a member of the Transition Advisory Group. The first thing I want to do is to commend those who are in attendance this morning and congratulate you on making it through the first round, the preliminary round, round one, and now going on to the finals. And to thank you for stepping up and heeding the call to public service. The fact is that it becomes more challenging each and every day to serve in public office. We see that there are finite resources that are available to us. The scrutiny is intense. The challenges always new and often daunting. And the fact that you are willing to serve in this critical office, these critical offices that will be new. You're going to be creating the template for the future in terms of county executive and county council members. And I know, as I look around, not all of the candidates who are going to be on the ballot in November are here right now. And there might be good reason why some aren't. But the fact that you're here learning as much as you can about the operations of county government is absolutely critical. I made some comments back in early January about what I wanted the last Board of County Commissioners to do and to achieve before our terms expired. There are essentially three things. The one is to make sure that we pass on a balanced budget to the county executive and to the county council, to pass the Health and Human Services levy, and to make sure that the transition to the new form of county government was as seamless as possible. Well, the Health and Human Service levy was passed. The budget is not only balanced, but we have the second best bond rating out of 88 counties in the entire state. And I think it's fair to say that this transition to the new form of county government is going smoothly, and that when the time comes for you to step up and to occupy your positions in the new government, you will have at your disposal the information and the knowledge, conversance, familiarity with county government that you need to be effective. Because quite frankly, in this day and time, the baton cannot be dropped. It has to be passed on without error, without mistake, and we believe that we're in position to achieve exactly that. Another important thing that we were able to do is to, as kind of our bequest, is to give you a number of not only the rudimentary day-to-day programs that are functioning well at the county, but there are a number of exemplary ones. Programs that aren't being done anywhere else in the state, in few places in the nation, and that others are now looking to us in an effort to replicate what we're doing. Whether it's Invest in Children, whether it's the Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative, the Office of Reentry, which is critical because more men and women are returning to Cuyahoga County, and specifically to a couple of zip codes in the city of Cleveland from penal institutions throughout the state, in greater plurality to Cleveland and Cuyahoga County than any other county or city in the state. And we have the only Office of Reentry in the entire state of Ohio, the only Invest in Children program, the only Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative. But beyond that, we have some solid economic development programs. There's a group that's been meeting, Cuyahoga Next Advisors, men and women from the public, private, nonprofit, eleemosynary sectors who are focused on economic development. Been meeting for the last 4 or 5 years now on a regular and consistent basis, and have helped shape programs like Innovation Zones, which just received an award from Midtown Cleveland. Programs like North Coast Technology Opportunity Funds and many others. So there's a lot of good news. When you take over county government, there are going to be programs that work, and they're meeting not just basic needs of our residents, but are going above and beyond in a creative and innovative ways. Now, one of the projects that's going to come online, and you'll be there when it first, I might be there for the groundbreaking, but you'll be there when it's up in operation, is our Medical Mart and Convention Center. Now, I invited the gentleman to come. I don't see him out in the audience, but somebody called me on Friday and said, you know, we're paying a lot of money as taxpayers for the Medical Mart Convention Center, but it strikes me that the benefit is going to go to MMPI, the private sector partner, and to conventioneers. How do we, the public, the residents and denizens of Cuyahoga County, how are we going to be benefited by Medical Mart Convention Center? Well, a couple of things. The first point that needs to be made, and you're going to have a chance to obviously engage in this dialogue over the next couple of months on the campaign trail. The first point that needs to be made is that we needed a private sector partner for this project. We needed somebody who had the expertise and skills, who has run a merchandise mart-like facilities elsewhere and done so successfully. And MMPI is number one in that respect. See, there is no template that exists for a medical mart at this point. So you want to try to involve somebody who at least has run similar kinds of complexes in the past and has done so successfully, efficiently, and effectively. The other thing that's critical to know is, unfortunately, the market is not favorable for us at this juncture in Cuyahoga County. And what I mean by that, many other communities could easily have the resources available where they could simply do this without a private sector partner. Given the economic malaise that's inflicted Northeast Ohio and have impacted diversity in Northeast Ohio, particularly over the last 10 to 15 years, we weren't in the position to do this by ourselves. We needed some additional credibility and legitimacy that was brought to bear and is given to us by partnering with somebody like MMPI. But a couple of other key points. If MMPI profits through the operation of the Medical Mart Convention Center, this community does even more. Because if they're successful, that means the project is successful. And the project's successful, it means people are coming into our community to stay in our hotels, to eat at our restaurants, to buy from our merchants and vendors. And that we're bringing in people and we're giving them a good experience. Because as we all know, when people finally get here to Northeast Ohio, they're amazed. They always say, I didn't think it was going to be this nice. I didn't know you had X, Y, and Z. I didn't know about the Playhouse Square. I didn't know about the Cleveland Orchestra and University Circle. I didn't know about the community theaters. I didn't realize the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was what it was. And so we got to get them here. And the Medical Mart Convention Center is a mechanism to get them here and then to sell them on this community as a place to live, a place to visit, and a place to relocate your business. So if MMPI wins, if they're doing well as a result of our partnership, that means that this community is benefiting quite handsomely. But the other thing I wanted to share with the citizen who contacted me was that we are also trying to do something quite, I won't call it completely unique, because similar programs are in place elsewhere, but what we plan to do is an enhancement of what exists in other communities. And what we're shaping is what we refer to as a community benefits proposal or package. That is, how can we use the Medical Mart Convention Center complex in a way that maximizes its benefit to this community in which the facility and complex will be located? That's the real challenge, and that's the real opportunity for us. Now, Why do we need, and I'm going to get into what is a community benefits package or community benefits agreement, but why is it that we need it? Is because a lot of, and this has been the case in Cleveland, there have been a lot of public-private partnerships to construct various infrastructure and capital improvements here in Northeast Ohio. But far too often, it's been a capital P in terms of public and a small lowercase p in terms of private. And by that I mean the money to construct these public improvements has come out of the taxpayer's pocket with very little in the way of sharing in the risk. More than willing to take in the reward, but less sharing in the risk on the part of the private sector. Now, this is not only the case here in Northeast Ohio, it's been the case with many public infrastructural improvements throughout the nation. So we want to kind of flip the script and change the paradigm here to make sure to maximize the public benefit from what is 95%, if not more, a publicly financed project. Now, again, community benefits agreements, community benefits packages and proposals have been adopted in many other communities across the United States, but we're trying to do something a little bit more unique here. I believe in a kind of a five-pronged approach in terms of how the public can benefit from this project. And that is benefit beyond the dollars that are brought in to the community by visitors and conventioneers who use, or vendors who take up space at the medical mart. And here's how we achieve some benefits beyond those. Number one of our objectives of community benefits package is to maximize local small business enterprise, SBE, utilization during the project. We want to help grow our small businesses. We know that the future of this community lies with some of the emerging companies that are looking for opportunities here in this community to grow and prosper. So one of the things we want to do is to utilize to the maximum potential our local SBEs. A second thing, we want to make sure that the people at work on the project, to the extent possible, are county residents. You know, during the construction phase and operation phase, we don't benefit unless county residents are working on the project so that the money circulates and stays in this community. Because if most of the workers live elsewhere, then those are dollars that they spend elsewhere. So that doesn't help us in terms of strengthening our local economy. A third thing we want to do is to take advantage of Medical Mart Convention Center as a workforce development opportunity. How can we utilize this in a way that helps those who are interested in hospitality industry, the construction industry, healthcare industry? How can we take advantage of this major physical development to help men and women in this community improve their skill level, particularly in those areas that are related to the construction and operation of the Medical Mart Convention Center? A fourth area, public art. You know, one of the great things about this community, and another great legacy that's being left for the next group of county leaders, is Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. You know, I think we're number 5 in the nation now in terms of per capita public expenditures on arts and cultural organizations here in our community. That's significant because arts and culture, I think, $1.3 billion industry here in Northeast Ohio. $1.3 billion is generated by the activity in that sector. 3,600 men and women have full-time employment as a consequence of our arts and cultural organizations. So we want to figure out how can we make sure that there's a strong public art component to the Medical Mart Convention Center complex. The fifth thing we want to do, we want to make sure that the Medical Mart Convention Center facility isn't just something that's patronized and used by the out-of-towners, visitors, conventioneers. We've got to figure out a way to make it as my kids would say, something that's popping and happening 24/7, that the residents in this community will have a reason to go down to the Medical Mart Convention Center and to enjoy programs and various offerings there. So these are the way, so that's the five-pronged approach, those 5 things we want to do in addition to just making sure to get people here and having them spend their money here so that we can maximize the benefit to this community of the Medical Mart Convention Center. Now, we've already taken a number of steps. I think the first step was taken actually January 7th. I got the date from Jonathan Hollifield, January 7th, 2009, when I think I convened about 15 or maybe 20 people from a variety of pursuits to talk about just how we do this. How is it that we make sure that the public benefits optimally and maximally from the Medical Mart Convention Center? After that, we made sure to negotiate terms in the development agreement with MMPI that says at least 40% of the workers during construction, 40% of the workers have to be county residents and 20% Cleveland. I thought that was too low, and even though that's in the agreement, we've been working on 50 and 25. So at least half of the workers during construction phase have to be county residents, and at least 25% from the city of Cleveland. Those are the numbers that Turner Construction and MMPI are working with. Now those are the bottom line numbers. We're going to try to do much, much better than that. Now there are some limitations, obviously, in terms of what we can do, but there's no reason why we can't aspire to that kind of goal. And we have language in the development agreement that addresses that, and that also addresses SBE utilization, and says that MMPI and their partners, in this case Turner Construction and URS, which is the development and the design build team, are going to also follow the county's guidelines in terms of SBE, small business enterprise utilization. The other thing that we've done, Turner Construction Company has already agreed. One of the real challenges for small businesses when it comes to projects like this is being able to qualify for those projects. Sometimes they can't get bonded. They can't get insured. The contracts are too big for them to handle at their size. So Turner Construction Company's already agreed, said that's not going to be a barrier for SBEs, local SBEs, and our working with them. They say, we're going to make sure that any SBE that's otherwise qualified, we'll make sure that they've got the bonding taken care of, that they don't have any insurance problems. And they're going to what I call bite-size some of the contracts, so that smaller SBEs will be able to handle these and do these, perform these contracts efficiently and effectively. The other thing that we did was the county has done is to contract with the Neighborhood Leadership Institute, a local nonprofit, to help us fully flesh out what we want in the way of community benefits, agreement, proposal, and package. Don Slocum is the executive director, highly regarded young man. I say young man because he's around my age in the nonprofit world here locally. And the person who's been his front man, the front man of that band is attorney Jonathan Hollifield. Now, don't hold it against Jonathan that he used to play for the Cincinnati Bengals, because he's fully committed and engaged to Cleveland right now. And he's doing a marvelous job for us in helping to articulate in a very comprehensive way what the community benefits package is, what we should be negotiating with MMPI and Turner Construction over the ensuing weeks and months to make sure that that five-pronged approach is realized. And I won't go in, trust me, we'd be here an hour or more if I were to go into some of the details of the very comprehensive proposal that Jonathan and NLI have presented. But let me suffice it to say that what's really important and unique and exciting about their proposal is that they're talking about capacity building, human capacity building in terms of the workforce, in the long range and business entity capacity building. So this isn't, their proposal is giving us a roadmap and a blueprint so that we would not only benefit in the short run, our workers and our business enterprises, but we will have built, taking advantage of all that Medical Mart Convention Center is, to build some, strengthen and undergird some long-term capacity and ability for the individuals to move up in the world of construction, in the world of hospitality, et cetera, but also so that companies, these small business enterprises, would be ready and prepared to take on ever increasing challenges in terms of difficulty and scope. And that's what's really exciting, and I think differentiates the proposal that NLI has from what you see in the way of community benefits agreements and packages elsewhere across our country. Well, as you see, I'm pretty excited about what we're doing and what that's going to mean to the public. But let me say this, I'm gone in 3.5 months. And so it's going to be up to you to make sure to execute this community benefits package, to make sure that we, again, maximize, because that's the word of the day, at least for me in this presentation, maximize the public benefit from this facility. So I want to thank you again for being here. I thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions, both Jonathan and I will endeavor to respond to them. Okay? Just like Julian and maybe David have questions?
Well, they come up to the mic.
Don, if I remember right, Don Southport, is that right?
Jack.
Jack Schwan. That's Jack
There's
Schwan.
nothing personal.
Okay.
I have to leave, though.
Okay, oh, I thought you were headed to the mic. Okay.
Peter, you've been out to Juergens before,
Sure
so
have,
you kind of know where my question, I think, is going to come from. You listed 5 benefits, none of which had in our single biggest contributor to Northeastern Ohio on your 5 benefits. Manufacturing, you got it, because you talked about construction jobs, legitimate, one-time, and maybe building an organization, hospitality, a follow-on job. But the core of our community are the M&Ms, Mars is their candy bars, we have our M&M. Manufacturing and medical. We have left out, and when you talk to Toby Cosgrove, Dr. Cosgrove said, I mean, in fact, I was at an event last night, and he said specifically, I will bring and try to bring my sub-suppliers here to encourage them. That building is going to be housing medical resident equipment. It's going to be housing physical wheelchairs. It's going to be housing all kinds of equipment. We need to have Stryker Industry instead of being in Indianapolis. When they're putting their hip joints in the Cleveland Clinic, we need to make sure that follow-on job is where the real ripple effective, where we want this to be successful. And you want to talk about multipliers, those are 5 and 6 and 7 time job multipliers, and it didn't come out in your 5. So manufacturing and medical, our M&Ms, Mars Candy Bar, think about that. That's how we need to get this to be a true success with our own M&Ms.
You're right.
Well, Jack, I stand corrected, and I'll make sure that in future presentations, I particularly focus on the intersection between healthcare in particular and manufacturing, and how we also want to take advantage of that in terms of capacity building, job creation.
But it needs to be there, it needs to be at the forefront right now, not after the building is up. And unfortunately, so often those devices, they get made overseas, or they get made in Indianapolis or someplace else. We need to be right at the table, because our Cleveland Clinic, our university hospital system, we're installing those things. And we should be able to bring that environment here. I mean, the stents are being made by Norman Noble right up the street here. We're making the wheelchairs out in Lorain County. We should be making all those devices in our region here.
Well, you're absolutely right. And let me say this, the Medical Mart component of Medical Mart Convention Center and bringing the vendors here is not just, is not solely and exclusively to get medical conferences and conventions here and as a means of attracting those, but also, just like we're doing with wind energy, not only do we want to have wind turbines in the lake and be the first to do this in freshwater environment, but the real big catch, as it were, is to bring to this community those manufacturing companies so that we can manufacture those wind turbine component parts. And the same thing absolutely applies in healthcare and biotech, biomed, in terms of manufacturing.
Fortunately, the wind turbines, we are. Horsburgh and Scott's making the gears, the bearings are being made by Timken, the shafts are being made out in Lake County, the blades are being made by Molded Fiberglass Corporation, so we've got those components here. We just need to tell people, the medical, those devices are not here yet, and we need to insist that we get them here.
Okay, good point. Julian?
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for the comments. I had two questions. One was, can you talk a little bit more specifically on what are actually going to be, what's going to be left for the new government as it relates to the medical mart? What parts of the contract are still going to have to be done? Or, you know, you mentioned that you're already going to be doing the groundbreaking before the transition occurs. So, you know, what specifically is going to be left? And then number two, you talked a lot about the small businesses, and I'm wondering what's being done for minority businesses as far as the medical mart?
Good question. Let me take the second question first. We have at the county, it's important to know, and Lenora Lockett, who's our Director of Procurement and Diversity, is in the back, and you might want to make sure to have a conversation with her. We have a SBE program. In order to have a race or gender-based program, you have to have done a predicate study, and the predicate study has to, in effect, authorize you to have a race or gender-based solutions to any disparities. Our disparity study did not, which is required under the law of the land through a number of Supreme Court decisions, did not permit us to have race or gender-based programming. Instead, we could have, but the law clearly permits programs and efforts to be put in place by governmental entities that benefit small businesses. And what we found is the majority of companies that have registered with us as small business enterprises are run by members of so-called minority groups or by women. So it's been a legal proxy for MBE or FBE programs. And so when you support SBE programs, when you do the kind of, we have a similar challenge in terms of workforce diversity. We can't say that you have to hire X number of women or X number of African Americans, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans. We aren't able to do that. So you have to come up with legal and lawful proxies for doing that. And so our requirements that X number of workers be from the county, X number of workers from the city of Cleveland, which is a majority, so-called minority city. Those are ways where legally we can attack the issues of diversity. Now, with the second question, you asked what's going to be left on the table for the new county government relative to Medical Mart Convention Center. A whole lot, because you're going to have to monitor the process from, in terms of, are they meeting the various goals that might be in the community benefits package agreement, to make sure that you know that there's a contingency fund on most of these projects for a reason, because things always happen that you could not have imagined or speculated ab initio. So you're going to have to keep a close eye on how the project is progressing. Over the next couple of months, there's going to be a lot of activity. We anticipate we're going to issue the bonds before the end of the year. As a matter of fact, we had better to get the best rates. The rates are ideal right now. And also, we have, what's the bond for
we presently have 130 billion in ERA bonds, broken between the facility bonds and the economic development, which are the infrastructure bonds. We have to go out in the bond market to use those by the end of this year. That'll save us, presently we're guessing 35 to 40 million over the life of this project, just by using those recovery zone bonds at this point. So we will be out within the time frame set by the federal government.
So that's also creates obviously a real legitimate urgency why we want to get these bonds issued before the end of the year. The other thing is that we will be executing a number of agreements with MMPI, because beyond the development agreement, you have operating agreements. I think the operating agreement might very well fall in your laps, but the financing agreements, et cetera, all of those have to be done in the next couple of months. But there's going to be plenty of work for the new county regime, without question, relative to Medical Mart Convention Center. And who knows what decisions you might be asked. We can't even guess what they might be, because the only thing that will have been done by the end of the year, very obviously, the other thing we're going to complete is the real estate transactions. We have memorandum of understanding with the city of Cleveland and other parties from whom we're purchasing land, but those final definitive legal agreements will also be consummated by then.
And we'll have,
Jim?
we will have the guaranteed maximum price by the time you take office. And this is a design build, so the MMPI and Turner Construction will provide us a guaranteed price that they will build the buildings for. If it goes over that, it's at their cost. That'll be in place by the end of the year. And that will be well within what the quarter-cent sales tax can pay for.
State Senator Miller?
Commissioner, my question is whether the community benefits package has been completed and signed off on by all the relevant parties, or whether some of it is still under negotiation.
There is no question that it's under negotiation in large measure. That's something also that we're fast tracking, because this language needs to appear in the operating agreement and arguably in one of the other agreements, the financing agreement. It's hard, we're going to leave that up to our legals. But a lot of this, we've determined what we want to see in the package. We anticipate that MMPI is going to be supportive, because what we're talking about is just good public policy, and it's fairness and equity. We want to make sure the whole community benefits. So there is some more work to be done in that respect, and even some of those elements of the community benefits package might have to be negotiated by the next county executive and county council with MMPI. Mr. Scipione.
Commissioner Jones, thank you for your service. I'd like to point out that I think I'm the only county executive candidate remaining. So thank you very much. And I wanted to just...
Duly noted, duly noted. It's been recorded as such.
To Jack's question, I don't know if you know about this, but Midtown Cleveland and the hub of innovation that we've just created, that's going to extend from St. Vincent's out to University Hospitals, focusing on medical devices, technology, and as they spin out from the UH and the Cleveland Clinic, that enterprise is now talking with the people at MMPI to make sure that those two pieces dovetail together, so that the sales offices would be in MMPI, but we try to attract the manufacturing and the developers and the research and development along the Healthline corridor. So that's ongoing.
That's the R&D piece?
Well, that's the R&D piece, but we want to then move that out to the operational piece.
The operational piece
is right.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I think you've earned a break at this point. I don't know what's next in the proceedings.
Typical politician, he gives you a break and now
Yeah,
you have to tell you, no, you can't have a break.
Right, leave it to him to deny you a break. But once again, thank you for being here. Thanks for stepping up in the moment of the county's need and being willing to undertake a challenging assignment in creating a new government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Actually, I'd like to just go right into Jim's presentation on the tag updates, and then we can stick around and have an opportunity if people have additional questions. I'd be happy to do that if everybody's okay with that. Just to go on. Okay, thanks.
We know you've been here all morning, so I'm going to skip the first part of this, which is the goals and objectives. You've all heard them 20 times before. They were talked about this morning. I think what's more important for you guys is to kind of get a feel how we see the next couple months rolling out here. In October, the executive committee, which oversees all the work groups, is going to compile and hash through all the recommendations coming forward. The executive committee then will formalize those and push them on to the transition advisory group, which actually by the charter is a group that's legally endowed to bring recommendations to the new government. During late October, while we're doing our budget as well, the Transition Advisory Group will be reviewing those recommendations. I will point out to you that we will not change one word of the recommendations that come to the TAG from the Executive Committee. We will not change one word. However, we believe that there may be information that's needed. There may be a different perspective. Sometimes great recommendations have chilling effects in other places. There's a yin and a yang to this again. I wish there were just great, 100% wonderful ideas, but sometimes it's a great idea, but there is a cause and effect, and there is a problem that's created over here. I think the TAG would be remiss if we didn't point some of those issues out to you as addenda and other things to the report. What will this mean in the real world? There may have to be other modifications that occur if you go with this recommendation. This is how we see it going. But I want the people that have worked so hard from this community on these recommendations to know that the work they're presenting is going to go to the new government as it was written by them. I think they deserve that respect and that right. We will add on to it. We'll point out new factors, different things to think about as you're going through these things. November 2nd, of course, you all know is a very important day. Beginning November 3rd, the people within the county, and I believe a number of work group folks are being asked to be available to you to begin an in-service on county government, on the government, one that presently exists, on recommendations that are coming, a laundry list that I'm creating of things that I think you all are going to have to know about as you come in. And that stretches from Gateway to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and other things. Now, there's a lot of things that you might have thought were done and gone. Got news, aren't done and gone. There are some heavy decisions on some of the stuff that have to be made. JSR, Justice System Reform. We're going to work with the Levin College at Cleveland State to put together an in-service program for the new council and for the executive. And we see the executive meeting being separate from the council at times, you all being together at times as we move forward. And in fact, Sister Joanne's going to come up in a few minutes and talk to you about how we want to proceed to do that planning with you. But we intend to use from November 3rd, to the extent that you're available and willing, all the way through December 31st, and even further, to begin to talk in depth about some of these issues. The other thing we're going to do is by Halloween, we will have passed our budget this year. And it will be a balanced budget, because by law, we have to pass a balanced budget. Now, to do that, we might have to go into the reserves a little, or we might have to do some cuts, we might have to do other things. But that initial work is going to be done, and we will be able to present to you, as soon as Election Day, the budget passed by the commissioners for 2011. Now, budgets aren't static documents. Budgets are living, breathing documents that get changed on a regular basis. 2009, at the end of the first quarter, my OBM folks presented me with a $29 million deficit projected for the rest of that year. We completely changed the budget at the end of the first quarter. So you'll have the ability to weigh in, to modify the budget that's passed, but the commissioners by law must pass a balanced budget by December 31st of 2010 for 2011. It's a legal requirement. The other thing I would say is someone had suggested at one point that we just end every contract at the end of the first quarter in 2011. If you heard the county council planning talk about the volume of contracts, well, that doesn't include all the multi-year contracts that don't go on every year. There's no way, unless you guys would work every day around the clock, that you could ever keep the business of the county going if we did that. So contracts won't end. However, most contracts have the ability to be amended, to be modified, to be changed based upon performance of the vendor, based upon financial realities, based upon other things. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity for the council and the exec to weigh in on those things. But we intend to provide to you, the first day you come in, the projected budget, the proposed passed budget by the commissioners for 2011. And then in January 2011, you'll all be sworn in and basically go at it. And those of us that are left will work with you diligently, but the clock is ticking. So our intent is really to be formalized and ready to sit down with you in a good way to begin the dialogue, not only on recommendations coming from the transition, but on a lot of how the day-to-day operations work, how they may want to be changed. We're going to have a section, PFM is contracted by the TAG and is doing a lot of work with us on what we call day one requirements for the exec and the council. Decisions that have to be made in that first few days when you take over. County council planning, for example, there has to be a meeting immediately. There have to be some things that are done in that first meeting so that the council can operate. There are other things that have to occur. We'll have a laundry list of those things to begin to sit down with you in November, so we plan it out to do it in a well thought out, well structured way as January rolls through. And that's kind of our short-term plan, and I think Sister's going to come up now to talk to you about how we intend to get feedback from you on what November, December looks like, what's possible for you, what's not, how we do this. So Sister Joanne.
This will be really, really brief. Within the next day or so, you're going to be receiving an email with a survey attached. We've been working with CSU's Levin College Center for Leadership Development to plan the in-service, the November-December in-service for the newly elected officials. We're also working with PFM. We're going to be coordinating all kinds of sessions. CSU has a plan in mind of what they would like to do, but we'd like your input, both as to topics, format, timing, sessions, etc. So you're going to get this email. We're going to ask for a quick turnaround on this because we need to get moving on really detailing out the final plan for this in-service. So when you get this email, please return it. It'll probably be, we will probably give you maybe a week to return it, and we'll go back to Kelly Neal. But I just wanted to say to you, please don't ignore this request for your input, because we're interested in what you're interested in for that in-service session. Thank you. And I believe...
I have a little executive privilege. Many of you probably know Dean DePiro, the mayor of Parma. His father was in a very serious car accident yesterday and died this morning. So it came out through Cleveland.com while we were here. I don't know if you're willing, but to do just a moment of silence for Dean and his family and his father at this point in time. Thank you. And with that, I think Joe Nani will close out the session.
I just wanted to say thank you. There was a lot of staff at the county that really did a lot of work to put this event on today. Greg Wilson, Jonathan Schick, Mary Dennehan, Kelly Neal, Debbie Dowd, Rich Smith, Joanne Gross, Patty Davis, Bonnie Thomas, Linda Barley, and Jeff Brudney from CSU. Linda and Jeff are not county staff. And then also another thank you to the staff here at Rocky River, especially Emil Rossel, who assisted in putting this event together. At this time, does anyone have any additional questions for, pardon me? Oh, a reminder, the survey that's in your packets, it's different from what Joanne was talking about, but please take some time to fill that out. Does anyone have any additional questions? We'll be around, standing around if anybody wants to walk up and ask us. Thank you very much again for attending.